You were talking about having this urge from when you were small.
Yes.
From a layman looking at you, perhaps they would say, yes, but that drive did not come from who you are as a spiritual being, your lineage as a spiritual master, that your sense of destiny was coming through to you from when you were young, that drove you to that need, or that was an inbuilt need, if you like, in your spiritual. In my terminology, I would say your higher self, your monadic energy, your higher consciousness was driving you to follow your destiny, and it came down through you as an urge to be drawn towards meditation and so on. How much would you say that what the path that you followed was from your lineage, and how much was actually your observations as human being of the situation around you?
Observation prompts who we are inside. If we are a spiritual being from perhaps a previous life, from another dimension, and we have that mind occupying this body, the things we observe around us will be perceived in a spiritual light. So when I see a mother and father getting married, having kids, struggling, surviving pain, and losing jobs, working, getting sick, getting old, getting dying, I go, I want more than that. Now, for a non-spiritual person, they'll say, they really lived a good life. They really support their kids, and they really, did their responsibility. Wow, when I grow up, I want to do that. What we observe around us in the world is the same, but how we interpret it is dependent on our lineage.
I would say that.
Would you agree?
Yes.
So therefore, what you say in that respect, I agree. Because many of my peers are doing many just very normal things. And they're comfortable. And they write to me or email and say, we're amazed at what you're doing. And it amazes me that they're amazed, actually, because it's just very natural for me. So my point is that how we perceive the promptings, how we perceive what prompts us is dependent on your mind. It's dependent on, if I may, the level of your perception or how you digest that. And how you digest it is dependent on what level your mind is. If your mind is very gross, very materialistic, you will digest it on that level. Perception is the same. It's how we digest it.
And do you think that through education, because very often it seems to me that perception shifts for people when someone will come along and show you the same picture in another light.
Definitely.
And
Definitely.
That is the role of the teacher a lot of the time, isn't it?
Definitely. That's why Tibetan Buddhism, or Tibetan religion, is Tsem 100% from India. Everything comes from India. Not one iota comes from anywhere else. In our language, we call India the land of the Aryas, or the land of the awakened ones. And for us as Tibetans last time to journey to India once and to visit the holy spots was a very great privilege and was what we wished. Now my point to you is I'm going to share with you what we have been taught in the monasteries and what my eminent teachers have shared. And this is not to contradict you. It is to share, because I think you like knowledge a lot. So therefore, education definitely can influence. Again, how much it can influence you is dependent on the level of your mind. I'm sure you agree. Because you can talk to some people until you're blue. And I'm sure you have. And they look at you blinking. I don't get it. And they'll go back to the basic question. How do I start? And you almost lose it. Because I lost it many times. I've lost it many times and I still haven't gotten it back. And there are some people you just talk for a little while and they go, yeah, not just that.
You can see the
2-3 years later, you're doing more than me. And I go, oh,
fantastic.
yes,
So
and you
exciting.
rejoice, isn't it? So education, having said that, we still have to educate. So in ancient India, the respect of the guru, teacher, is tremendous because the guru is the pivotal person who will change your perceptions to make you see things differently and change your attitude toward others. So teachers play an important role. Why do I say that? In the Tibetan tradition, teachers are highly valued, especially teachers that are very good, teachers that are sincere, knowledgeable, sincere. Why? Because they can leave you better off after meeting them. Why? They teach from compassion, not from ego. They teach to share, not to win. And they share to help, not so much as to convert. And that's very important in a teacher. Because if we run around the world telling everybody that I'm the best, I'm the only one, this is the right path. You are the right path. You are good, but it doesn't mean it suits them. So we have to respect their mentality, their level. So hence, in the Buddhist tradition, I want to share with you, and I think you can grasp on very strongly. We have 3 types of minds. We have a gross mind. We have a subtle mind. Then we have a very subtle mind. Very, very subtle. These minds are inherent in us. The very subtle mind is the mind that has no beginning and it has no end. It's one with the universe, literally. It is one with the universe. This is the very subtle mind. Now, this subtle mind, my dear, this subtle mind cannot be perceived during the waking hours or during conscious hours. Because this very subtle mind is within us. From this subtle mind arises the mind. From this arises the gross mind. The gross mind is your eyes, your taste, your smell, your hearing, your touch. This is your gross mind. Now, when we are sleeping, the gross mind dissolves. How? You can't see, hear, taste, touch, feel anymore. Even some people when they're sleeping, you touch them, nothing. You can be talking to them, nothing. Next day they remember nothing. But they're there, they're alive. So what happens is that the gross mind has dissolved into the subtle mind. The subtle mind is there in a dream state. When you're dreaming, you can see, you can hear, you can taste, you can feel. And all the feelings and experiences you have in your dream is just as real as if you're awake. You wake up in a sweat. You can wake up laughing so happy. Correct? But you're experiencing, aren't you? That's what the great Indian master said. You are experiencing. Now, to go one level deeper, when you dissolve the subtle mind into the very subtle mind, there's clear space. That's when your body is immobile. No gross consciousness active. It's as if you're looking at the person as if they're dead. I think that's after rapid eye movement, REM stage of sleep, scientifically speaking. Those are likened to death, intermediate state, which is before rebirth, and rebirth. Why? When you are sleeping, you are still somewhat conscious of the environment around you. If someone does something, you can just wake up still. When you're dreaming, you're in your own world already. And it feels real. And when you wake up, sometimes you don't even know what was real, the dream or now. Then when you finish your dreaming, you enter the last stage of sleep. Your body's like that. Nothing. And if someone looks at you, they would think you're dead. Okay? Because you're in that deep kind of sleep. What happens is your consciousness has dissolved into your subtle mind. When you're dying, with respect to everyone, when you're dying, same thing. When you're first dying, you can hear your relatives weeping and the people around you crying, and you're slightly perceptive, but you're also kind of high. And then when you're finally dissolving your wings into your final chakra, when you're dissolving into your heart chakra, back all the way in, then you can't see, hear, or feel your relatives anymore, but you're not dead. If they put their hand over your heart, it's still warm, but your consciousness is there. Then the final, that consciousness still being there is dying. Then when you have died, you leave, all your subtle energies dissolve into your chakra, and you leave your body. That's the intermediate state. that intermediate state is likened to dreaming. Why? When you're in intermediate state, you can travel very fast, anywhere you want. It's at the speed of thought. It's better than astral travel. And you'll perceive everything around you. And for the people you recently loved, you will feel some attachment. For the people that you are have aversion to, you can even feel some anger still. All right? Then finally, when that intermediate state ends, you die, ends, and you take rebirth. It's like waking up from a dream. Then you wake up in a new environment, in a new body, in a new place, in a new situation. Now this mind, let me give it to you on a slightly philosophical point of view. This subtle mind, that is without beginning and end, but that's what's going to become an enlightened being. This mind is connected and associated with your body, but not necessarily dependent. Now this mind exists, and 1 hour ago had dinner and had conversations. 2 hours ago, 5 hours ago, perhaps had lectures and met some friends and people and students. Then maybe yesterday was on an airplane. Maybe the day before was in another country. You see, but that Anne who was in maybe perhaps Singapore yesterday, just an example, is in Malaysia. But if that Anne of Singapore didn't exist, the Anne of Malaysia couldn't exist. The Anne of Malaysia today wouldn't exist tomorrow if the Anne of Malaysia wasn't existing today. So this Anne, we're not talking about your body, we're talking about the momentum of your mind.
Right.
Similarly, let's go backwards now. To me, you look like you're 21. You must have existed at 1 month. You must have existed at birth. You must have existed prior to birth. Naturally, we were in our mother's stomach. When we were there, many people come out later, they recall what their mother said, the arguments their parents had, they recall the hot and cold their mother had, or she had a fall, or she was happy. They recall, they come out and say, I heard. And that's a proven scientific fact. Now, when we were 9 months gestation in our mother, we had this mind. That led up to birth. At birth, that mind came out. Then it led up at teenage years and our adult years. And right now. So this mind is continuous. Now,
But the soul.
we can call it the soul,
Yeah.
because when we translate it from the Tibetan text, there's no English word to appropriate it.
Okay.
So we can call it the soul. That's all right.
Just makes it easy for me to.
No problem. Then this soul is existent now. It was existent 20 years ago. It was existent at birth. It was existent in gestation. Now let's go back to conception. When our father and mother joined, the white and red blood cells joined, because that's what it says in the texts. When the white of the father and the red of the mother joins, then the physical constituents have formed. The physical constituents have formed, which is okay for a mind to take in birth. It is at that moment where the white and the red joins, the mind enters. When the mind enters, from that, the mind leads up to now. For that mind to exist at the time of conception, it must have existed prior. Hence reincarnation.
Is that the same mind that carries the karma from one lifetime to the next?
Definitely. Definitely. Do you know why? Because it is that soul or that mind that experiences the karma. So if that soul or that mind experiences the karma, that must be the author. Hence, if you're in your previous life, if you've done extensive spiritual practices, in this life, this mind, when they perceive life, they will perceive it on a spiritual sense. Okay? Correct. So therefore, at the moment of conception, our mind from our previous life has entered the body. If your mind exists now, it must have existed at birth. If it exists at birth, it must have existed at conception. If it exists at conception, it must have existed prior to conception. Why? If you say, my mind is a part of my body, we can debate, in a very friendly way. How can we debate? There are times where your body is very relaxed. Getting a massage, maybe laying on the beach, maybe, having a mocktail, and just relaxing but your mind is worried, and it's jumping, and it can't relax. So if your body is relaxed, your mind must be relaxed if they are one. They are connected, and they have interdependence, but they are not one. That's proof. Secondly, if you had a previous mind, soul, prior to conception, that soul mind must have been somewhere. If that soul mind was somewhere, it must have been a previous life, whether it is form or formless, because previous existences don't need to have physical form. And it doesn't have to be on this earth. Scientifically, I have read just 2 days ago, there are 40 billion habitable stars in our universe, according to mathematical calculation. Habitable that have life forms, but too far. That's what the Buddha has been saying for 2,500 years in India. Now, if our previous life had a life, it also had a body or whatever, and it created karma, then that previous life at conception had a mind, and then previous, and then previous, and then previous, and then previous. All those lifetimes that we have lived, the actions we have created, whether they were spiritually inclined or not, collects an energy. This energy is called karma. This karma is carried over. This karma can be stored in one little being. And this karma is what makes us experience what we have been experiencing. So, in this life, how much we advance, or how we react, or how we think, is pretty much from karma. Having said that, but karma is predestined, but is impermanent. It can't be changed. Why? If karma cannot be changed, there can be no enlightenment. So based on this thought, Dharmakirti, the great Indian Pandit in Nalanda Monastery, composed this and is still studying in our monasteries. What I just shared with you in brief. Hence, if we have a current existence, we must have a prior existence. If we have a prior existence, it must be dependent on a prior to that existence. Therefore, we have a current existence. If we have a current existence, we have a future existence. If we have a future existence, we must be the author of our existence. Why? Because our experiences are different from each other. If we believe in a creator that controls us, then our experiences must be the same. It's not denying a creator. It's denying the power that comes from us, not someone that controls us. Why? If there is a person or being that controls, I'm not saying not existing, controls us, then everything must be beautiful. Must be perfect.